Hi, welcome to the Bathtub. It's the old masturbator, Scott Bradfield, and Dodo the masturbating parakeet, and the masturbating dog is in the other room. We're doing a kind of one of those two of our most popular theme shows. When they say popular, that means I like them. Two of the most popular theme shows. One is the All Bathtub Hall of Fame, which is when we award an all bathtub work of. We take writers who have achieved great heights in their lives and success and literary esteem, and we take them one step further and we put them as bathtub Hall of Famers, and that's the important thing. We're going to give that to Richard Stark. I don't know if I'll be honest, I can't remember if we gave it to him before or not. Richard Stark, a.k.a. Donald E Westlake, one of our favorite thriller writers and comic thriller writers. The least comic of his stories are the ones he's most famous for, the Richard Stark ones. Most of his books under Donald Westlake are very funny. And the Richard Stark novels, I'll talk about a little bit them in a bit. And we're going to combine this incredible achievement for literary wannabes. People, Hemingway, these people they have good careers, but they haven't quite hit the All Bathtub Hall of Fame yet. And then we have Battle of the Bathtubs. There's a battle. There's a wrestling. They're wrestling and a fighting and a eye to eye. They see each other eye to eye and they try to beat each other because one of them has to win this Battle of the Bathtubs. We're going to take two great bathtub geniuses and we're going to see who was the better, who won this round. It's a tag team match. It's just one battle, one book by each of these two great writers. The other writer is Ross Macdonald, one of our favorite California detective writers, very prominent in the 60s and 70s. He started in the 50s, was working up through the 70s, wrote the Lou Archer novels, which we've been talking about quite a bit. We're reading those backwards because we like to set up completely arbitrary and meaningless reading chores for ourselves, just so we can remember what to read next. It kind of helps. And I'm working my way back into the 50s with old Ross Macdonald because when I was younger, I was told or was given the impression that his books get much better in the 60s with The Chill. The Chill is one of his best books. And all his late books I read and reread, and I didn't read many of the early ones, and I'm slowly reading my way backwards and getting all the early ones I haven't read. I've never read The Barbarous Coast, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. What year is this? 56? 56? I don't have my glasses on. And it was good. I really enjoyed it quite a bit. It's a mid-range Archer novel. It's like most of the Archer novels. Old Lou is out trying to find usually young people, young, fairly damaged people in the world. And this one is about a young girl who's disappeared, and someone's looking. Oh yeah, a kind of man who sort of her protector, but has a complicated relationship to her. This old guy who runs a kind of expensive resort for wealthy people, like a tennis club for wealthy people. And Archer gets involved in that. And as always, Archer always ends up going out and discovering the pasts of these people and all their interconnectedness and who their relationships are, and usually some secret family history. You can pretty much predict all that's going to happen pretty early in an Archer novel. And this was good. I really enjoyed it. I never have trouble reading a Macdonald novel, and the ending is good. He always comes up. It's not really solving the mystery so much as understanding how this family basically screwed up all the kids in it, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. So that's the Lou Archer novel. The Richard Stark we haven't talked about, I don't think. Anyway, this is the first. Where's the first one? The Hunter. Okay, so most of you know the Parker books, whether you've actually read them or not, because they've been made into a lot of movies. Most recently, Jason Statham did one called Parker. It had Jennifer Lopez in it. It's okay. It's based on a good one of the better Stark novels. But many of us have loved Stark, and he was the pseudonym for Donald Westlake, who had several pseudonyms. And he invented Parker for this novel called The Hunted. This is the original first edition of The Hunted, which is later became known as Point Blank. Point Blank is one of the great film noirs. John Boorman, Lee Marvin. If you haven't seen Point Blank, go see it. It's an adaptation of this book. I remember I interviewed Donald Westlake, and I got a lot of books signed by him, and he didn't like it himself, but I do love that movie. And the thing for Westlake was that he wrote these just for money, and the premise was that basically there's this cold-hearted, basically crook. he's not a murderer, but he's not a psychopath. So he's not a psychopath in this. He just does things for selfish. He's a professional crook, and he does everything professionally. He never kills people if he has to because he knows it'll just cause him trouble. But he will kill people if he needs to. It just has no morals whatsoever. Anyway, he gets double crossed at the beginning of the Hunter, and it was basically a revenge movie. You've seen quite a few versions of it. I think Payback is a remake of Point Blank, and Point Blank became the later title for this book because originally Westlake had no intention of writing this as a series. It was just a very popular book. And so the publishers came to him and said, well, why don't you keep writing these Stark books? And I remember interviewing him for this. He said he wasn't really happy with the idea because Westlake likes to write funny books. And Stark is the least funny character. He's just a killer. And they're very cold-clipped, very quick, very well plotted, really move along books. They always keep you guessing a little bit what's going to happen next. And the character of Parker and this kind of methodical monster is your central point of view. So it's a fairly new idea for paperback fiction at that time to really take the side of the bad guy. Anyway, he goes on, and I remember him telling me if he had intended to write a series, he would never have called him Parker. Because he wrote another 20 books with Parker as the central character. He said every time Parker pulled his car over, he would have to say something like Parker parked the car, and he'd always have to come up with a different way to say Parker parked. He said if I had known I was going to write this as a series, I would never have called him Parker. That's a pro writer as far as I'm concerned. He just thinks about the important stuff. The second book in the series was called The Man with a Getaway Face. Now, The Hunted is a pretty good one, but it's not a real typical Parker novel. Neither is the second one, The Man with a Getaway Face. These are all the first editions. Aren't they cool? These were originally pocket books, and then they were taken over. Gold Medal took them over in the 60s. They started, I think it might have been Knox Berger, I'm not sure. The great paperback editor Knox Berger took them over. The second one was The Man with a Getaway Face, and this is just about Parker getting facial surgery. It's a little bit like that David Goodis book, Dark Passage, where the guy goes, and they made a great movie with Humphrey Bogart. He changes his face, and then he goes off, and I forget, he probably has revenge. His nemesis in these books is something called The Outfit. The Outfit, and that's the title of the third novel, which I just read this week, or reread this week, The Outfit, which is, again, another thing that Westlake told me when I interviewed him, was he said, they always say that the criminals and the bad guys are always like these urban characters and blacks and Mexican people. He said, he imagined the real evil people in the world as being corporate executives. They're all a bunch of white bread corporate executives. They all named names like Smith and Parker and Jameson and Riley and stuff like that. And they're all just basically corporate hacks. And they live in these big office buildings. It was a very funny idea. And so basically Parker he's got this kind of, they're always trying to get back at him. And he goes originally in the first book, he starts killing people because they owe him $50,000. He just kills them until he gets his $50,000. And he basically, the next two books is about this arch nemesis, him versus the Outfit, who are always trying to get him. And that's what this third book is about. The Outfit was actually made into a good movie with, in one of Westlake's favorite versions of Parker, with Robert Duvall as Parker. Really, really cool. If you ever get a chance to see The Outfit, it's really good little film noir from the 60s or 70s. Anyway, I just reread this, and I enjoyed it. I didn't enjoy it as much as I do enjoy the later Stark books. The first three he hasn't really become the Parker books yet. It's kind of, Parker's not in about half of it. It's about this kind of plot he has to turn all the gangsters, all the professional crooks against this Outfit, this corporate hierarchy of mobsters, and there's a kind of a heist at the end. But most of the books, the really fun books, are about his planning a heist and all the people he works with. And in these later books, he brings in people, and I forget the guy's, is it Grover? He brings in a character who's he's an actor. He works he's like a summer stock actor when he's not robbing banks, and he robs banks and stuff so he can run his little theater company somewhere out like in the New York woods or something. And I can't remember his name. There's a few spin-off books with him, and he's a comic character, very funny character. And Westlake said I had to create him so I could have some fun with these books, because if you just deal with Parker, he's a bastard. He's still a bastard. Anyway, this is the fourth one. I haven't read this in a while. The Mourner. Basically, they're kind of worth reading in order, but they do get better about mid-period, 60s and 70s. And he left the books behind He stopped writing them, I think, in the 70s. And when I interviewed him in the 80s, he had just started writing them again. And he did another nice, actually some pretty good Parkers in the late 80s and 90s. Some of the better Parker books, I think, come out about that time. So, because it was his most popular. And many of them were sold to the movies. Really strong, wonderful, fun book. If you haven't read the Parker books, you're missing something. And we have our typical Battle of the Bathtubs. So these are two kind of mid-range. These were mid-range books by the two writers. I would say I would never pick these as the first books to read by either of them. I never had trouble reading either of them. I never had trouble turning the pages and having a good time. But it was between Barbarous Coast, mid-level Ross Macdonald, The Outfit, a kind of training Parker novel, and there was the Battle of Bathtubs. We've got to bring the bathtubs out here for visual aids. They're battling, and the winner is going to be by just a slight edge, probably the Barbarous Coast. It just works well all the way through. It doesn't kind of go off in the fugues that the Outfit does. Well, I think that Westlake's finding his way in how he's going to write those novels, and he knows where he's going when he writes this book. Okay, happy bathing. Get those bathtubs out there. They're wrestling and they're fighting. They gotta get out there and do some sort of exercise. Okay, take care.